2 games down and 2 to go on Divisional weekend. And the first game between the Rams and the Packers wasn't too much of a surprise. Green Bay gets the victory. They win by 2 touchdowns. And I think what was probably the most surprising was that they were easily able to move the ball against the Rams defense. Now, obviously, Aaron Donald is injured, and it seemed like they were able to scheme Devontae Adams away from Jalen Ramsey. And Aaron Rodgers had all day to throw, and Packers earned that victory every step of the way. And as I had said, they took advantage of the fact that the Rams knocked off the Seahawks, because who would have known if they ended up playing the Bucs? Now, that might be next week's NFC Championship matchup, so we'll see. But I think the Packers, give them credit. They won it, and it got a little bit close, but they were in control pretty much the whole game. And the Rams just were not nearly as good. Jared Goff was clearly banged up. They had some injuries. The Packers were just in a different class. They were. And I thought that maybe the Rams defense could keep them in it, but they just didn't have enough. And Aaron Rodgers, the way he's so locked in right now, he's going to be tough to stop. He really is. And Aaron Jones has big playability, where we've seen a lot this season where he doesn't do a whole lot and then boom, 50-plus yard play. Done it a ton this season. Devontae Adams has been completely consistent. And then when you get contributions from Allen Lazard, who had a huge touchdown and put the game out of reach. So the Rams cut it to 7, but the Packers were able to give them that breathing room, and they didn't look back. So not a whole lot to add to that game. This was about expected. And Green Bay is just better than the Rams, plain and simple, and Green Bay will be hosting either the Bucs or the Saints in the NFC Championship game. And as far as the NFC goes, those are your 3 best teams. They are. There was talk that maybe Seattle was for a while, but clearly that's not the case. So, and I think that between the Saints and the Bucs, my feeling is still the same, since we spoke last. And more to the point, I think that if the game is close, I trust Brady more than Breeze. And I think that the Bucs they're going in the right direction. And I guess the one thing that would scare me from the Bucs standpoint is the fact that they got creamed, as I'd said, the 2 previous games this season against the Saints, like really, really badly. So obviously, if you see that again, the Saints will cruise. So I think if you tell me that this ends up being like a multiple touchdown deficit, or, this is a blowout type of game, then I would tell you I think the Saints will win. But I think if it's close, and the way that the Saints have been in recent years, and just the way that it tends to be when it's Brady, and honestly, Drew Brees, and lately, doesn't seem to come up big when the going gets tough. So that's kind of how I view this. And I think that the Bucs will make big-time improvements against the Saints. So, I'm still going to lean Bucs, but obviously would not be surprised at all if the Saints come out there and they look like they did in the regular season against Tampa. So either way, though, cannot wait for next week at Lambeau Field. And I think if you're a Green Bay fan, I think you would still prefer New Orleans. They won early in the season at New Orleans. Now, both games that Green Bay played were on the road. They were at Tampa, they were at New Orleans, and just based on that alone, and just based on the way that Drew Brees is outdoors, whereas obviously Brady's played, for years in New England. He's used to that. I think if you're Green Bay, I think you'd rather play New Orleans. That's just my opinion. But that's the NFC. The AFC, we learned a lot more tonight. This was one of the games that the Ravens and the Bills, where I thought this was going to be a close one. And it was for a while. It was for a half, certainly. And for a good chunk of the third quarter, this was a close game. But the Bills continue to look dominant. They win it 17-3. Now, I didn't realize that the weather was going to play as much of a factor as it did. It was windy. it was definitely tough to throw the ball. Bad snaps, bad kicking. We'll talk about that, but the Bills look very strong. And Lamar Jackson did not come through. He didn't. He did not. And he would leave the game with a concussion. So he basically played 3 quarters. He did not play the fourth. And I think that you got to give Lamar credit for last week. And I think that the whole narrative in general was a little bit unfair. It's not like this guy's been in the league for 5-6 years. So, I think that we might see Lamar Jackson make that push, next time maybe to an AFC championship game. He's obviously 2 years in a row lost in this round. And the guy just isn't really a great passer. He is so electric running the ball like you've never seen. It really reminds you like Michael Vick. But just that Raven offense, once they go down, it's over. Now, they came back against the Titans, but it was early. We did not see what Lamar Jackson would have done down 17-3, but I can't imagine too much. Once the Bills got the touchdown return for 101 yards by Tyron Johnson, it was over. So how this game pretty much played out was it was an ugly first half, and it was pretty much anyone's game. Bills had some missed opportunities, missed field goals on both sides. Justin Tucker, Mr. Reliable, missed a couple of field goals. And the wind did play a factor, but you expect him to make those, and he didn't. And that definitely cost them. Tyler Bass wasn't much better. He missed a field goal. He had a chance to, close it out completely up 17-3 and wasn't able to do so. But the Bill defense was amazing. It really was. And it's a lot easier when you don't really have to worry that much about the passing game. It definitely makes things a lot easier, even though the Bills' run defense has not been great. It seemed early like maybe Gus Edwards, maybe J.K. Dobbins, that they were going to do something on the ground, but it just didn't happen. And, this was a 3-3 game at half. And it felt like, wow, this could be a very interesting finish. And the Bills came out with a great drive. And Stephon Diggs continues his amazing season. And you see on some of these really good teams, Devontae Adams for Green Bay, Stephon Diggs on Buffalo. So important. And that was such a big acquisition for Buffalo, more than I ever thought it would be. He stayed healthy, Diggs that is. Him and Josh Allen have great chemistry. It wasn't one of Allen's, crazy performances, but it was just as well. Didn't make mistakes, did what he had to do, and really leaned on the defense for this win. So the Bills can beat you in a number of different ways, and they love to pass the ball. That much is true. Even if it's a situation where it is a 3-3 game, they're going to continue to do what works for them, and that's pass it. So, Diggs gets a big touchdown, and so it's a 10-3 game, and the Ravens have a very good drive. They're moving down the field, and they're goal to go. And eventually it's third down, and Jackson loves to force the ball to Mark Andrews in that area. Loves to. I mean, other teams have to see this. He's been doing it for the last 2 years. And that's their biggest threat. When you don't really have that big receiver threat, like he pretty much was locking down Lamar Johnson, that is, who got the interception. He saw it the whole way. And that's a 10-point swing right there. If they throw an incomplete pass or something, it's 10-6, and you still got a game. Instead, he returns it all the way for a touchdown, 17-3, and that's your ball game. As soon as that happens, it was over. And on the next drive, Jackson would get hurt. He would be ruled out with a concussion. And Huntley, a rookie, who's basically their fourth string. So they had RG3 who got hurt. They had Trace McSorley got hurt. And Huntley, he did some things with his legs. He was able to make some plays, and they were close to making it a 17-10 game, but they were unsuccessful. If they had done so, they may have had a chance. This was with about 3 minutes left. But yeah, the Bills were able to win. And so today you had a couple of 2-touchdown games. And I thought that one was definitely going to be a lot closer than it was. And again, it was for a while. But the Bills are definitely a threat and very easy to root for. For me, I was 100% rooting for Buffalo. I have to be honest, I did not think that they were going to win. I figured it'd be close, but I thought that, the way that Josh Allen had looked at the end of the Colts game, I just thought that if it was close, and that was the key for the Ravens, keeping it close, because they win those types of games. And we've seen, the Ravens under John Harbaugh be very successful on the road in the playoffs. didn't translate tonight. And the Bills, let's see what happens next week. So looking at this Chiefs-Browns game, now obviously if you're a Bill fan, you're going to want the Browns, right? You're going to want to host a play. We don't know where the AFC Championship will be. It'll either be in Kansas City if they win, or it'll be in Buffalo if Cleveland wins. And the more this week has gone on, I still think Kansas City will win, but I expect Cleveland to be competitive. And so I'm changing my tone just a little bit, still with the same pick, but Kansas City really hasn't been playing meaningful football in quite some time, in a long time. I mean, they just had a bye week. Week 17, they sat all their starters against the Chargers, and then the week before that, it was a pretty much real game, but they knew against the Atlanta Falcons, but they knew that they had everything pretty much secured. So they're going to have to ramp things up, and it could be like last year against the Texans, where they might fall behind early, but you trust Mahomes and company to, kind of rally the troops and bring them back. I could see that. And the Browns are dangerous just because they do have a very good rushing attack. So I guess don't be surprised if the Browns do come out hot. If they don't, obviously, big time trouble for Cleveland. But, Cleveland, there could be a little bit of a Cinderella story going for them. And it would be kind of crazy if it were the Browns versus the Bills. Two of, honestly, historically, and since I've been a fan, two of the worst teams in the league. Cleveland by far, but Buffalo not too far behind. This is a team that had not won a playoff game in, around the same time as Cleveland, about 25 years. So Buffalo finally won last week to end that streak, and they're rolling. And I think whether Buffalo plays Kansas City or Cleveland, they are dangerous. Buffalo is a threat. They are. And it would be fun. Mahomes versus Allen, that would be something to watch. That really, really would be. Just because the way those two teams play, they love to throw the ball. So sign me up. And I think as a football fan, I can't imagine that game wouldn't be just highly entertaining. So the NFC, you have more of the veteran QBs, right? Rodgers, Breeze, and Brady. AFC, it's the young guns with Mahomes, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield. So, definitely in the NFC today, not a surprise. In the AFC, very impressed with the Bills. Very much so. And, I think that this Cleveland-Kansas City game tomorrow could be a lot of points. I would expect that. And you got to bet on Mahomes. But I do think that Cleveland is going to give Kansas City a game. And then, of course, very much looking forward to Tom Brady versus Drew Brees. And, I think the winner of that game, you got to be excited for the matchup against Aaron Rodgers. And in Brady's case, these are matchups that we have not seen because he's been in the AFC, looking really far ahead. How interesting would it be, Brady versus Mahomes again, this time in the Super Bowl, or even Brady versus the Buffalo Bills again. So that's getting, definitely further down the road. First things first, they need to beat a Saints team that has made them look silly during the regular season. So definitely excited for tomorrow. We'll recap everything, and I will talk to you again soon.